Hey there. Welcome to Ellie Conversations. I'm so glad you guys could join us. We are going to get started right away. And there's a few things I want to talk to you about what you're going to get out of this conversation. I'm delighted to have my colleague and friend, Steve Cadigan. Essential wisdom from Steve. This is what you're going to walk away with. One, you're going to understand what a talent hacker is and why leaders need to talk to a talent hacker to improve their future possibilities. Two, you're going to want to hear about his future book called The Future of Work. It should be on your nightstand in the next several months. And three, why fast turnover is actually a term that's going to be pretty good for both employers and employees. So why do I turn to Steve when I want to hear about talent? In addition to being an amazing international speaker, an advisor and board member to many, he has an amazing tier one portfolio of companies he's worked with, leaders, teams, executives, anywhere, from Airbnb, Twitter, Cisco, Andreessen Horowitz, you name it. He's taken years of experience, including his experience at LinkedIn, and provided unique ways for companies to look at success on three levels: the individual, for the teams, and for the organizations. Steve, I'm so glad you're here with me.
Hi, Ellie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So we're just going to get started. People will come in. I forgot to introduce Matt. Matt is our producer. Matt, say hi to everyone. Tell them what you're going to do to help us out.
Hey, everyone. Happy to be here. Thanks, Ellie. If you do have any questions or comments during the conversation, please do post them in the questions section, and I will do my best to address them during the conversation today. Thanks so much.
Okay, so let's get started, and we'll break a few times for questions. Last time we had so many questions that we wanted to give some pauses in between. But Steve, last time you and I were together, it was 75-degree weather. We were in Menlo Park together in the same place, face to face, and we were talking about the future in a hip hotel, which, by the way, in Menlo Park is rare, but it's happening. And if you could just give me three things that have changed either professionally and or personally since that day in February for you.
I think it's amazing, Ellie. We didn't know that we were rogue renegades being closer than 6 feet apart back when we met then, But okay, so like everyone else, my world has gone upside down. I have a bunch of kids at home, and the first thing that to me is having to negotiate Wi-Fi bandwidth with my kids who are playing games all the time during periods where I need to be on a Zoom call and use a lot of Wi-Fi. So that's the first thing, is like, I got to negotiate with my kids. The reality of kids homeschooling is that their normal school day, whereas it used to be 7 or 8 hours at school, at home is about 2 or 3, because we don't have PE, we don't have lunch, we don't have inter-class activities. So they're, nipping at the heels before I'm ready to entertain them. So I've had to find ways of adjusting. And the third, probably the biggest thing for me, is just life is, and it's been a beautiful thing. We have lunches together. I've got teenagers, so I don't see them till the crack of like 11 in the morning, but we have lunches together. We have dinners together. We pray together. It's just been really wonderful for us to enjoy that. And I think, learning to mix in activities and getting outside a little bit more. And now California, and I'm coming to you live from California, has opened up a little bit more. So we're looking forward to exploring parks and things like that. But those are probably the highlights.
I hear you. Everyone I talk to, very similar. It's the mix of personal and professional that before we were able to compartmentalize a bit, and now we're just trying to negotiate it in a bit more of a fluid manner. So you and I were talking the other day, and you told me about one of the most challenging, as a professional speaker, you've done hundreds, but this was a really challenging speaking event that you had to the graduates at SFU over Zoom. What do you tell kids graduating in this apocalyptic time about the future of their work?
I know, like everyone else, I'm like, okay, when the University of San Francisco reached out and said, Steve, we need you in 3 to 5 minutes to give us some motivational thoughts for our student graduates who are graduating in a way that they probably didn't expect and aren't looking forward to. And it feels like, water's been poured on the party a little bit. And so, thinking about that, and what was really interesting for me when this whole COVID reality struck is that I was in the middle of writing a book, which I hope we get a chance to talk about
Absolutely.
today.
Yep.
But I was in the middle of writing a book, and I, like everyone, had a panic, like, oh my gosh, is this what I'm working on going to have any value tomorrow? When in thinking about the future of work, are my theories going to hold up in this new reality? And what is that new reality? And so I think about this stuff all the time. And so when I thought about what words I could offer these graduates, it was that, obviously there may not be now as much opportunity as there was 3-4 months ago. But on the bright side, I said, you have something that no other generation has ever had. You have more intelligence with which to measure how companies handle strain and stress, how leaders handle strain and stress, and how cultures, how true people are to their cultures. Because we're seeing how everyone's handling a crisis. And it's in those moments when you find out the true character of an organization or of a leader. And I said, so now for the first time in history, every country, every company, every organization has been put to the test. And you can now see, did a company just immediately let everyone go? Did a company try to make all kinds of other cuts before they let people go? Did they stay there, people first, but actually they dumped the people? Like, what happened? Did they step up and repurpose their company to service the community? Or did they step up production and lobbying so they could charge products more for people in greater need? I mean, we're getting to see in massive, massive scale, great intelligence. So I said, listen, graduates, you have that opportunity. And, there's a famous politician out of Chicago named Ram Charan, and he was on in Obama's administration. And he said something which I told him, which is, never let a crisis go to waste, which is a really, one of my favorite quotes for right now, which is, yeah, it's crisis, but maybe now's a chance for you to see things in a different way that you're going to be able to benefit from down the road.
I love that. That was reminding me when I interviewed Michelle Zatlin, the COO and co-founder of Cloudflare. She used that quote as well. And she talked about all the little crises when you start out as a startup and you're small and you think they're so huge and you go, oh, we'll make an exception this time because it's a crisis. And she talked about never let that go to waste, to start setting your culture right away when you have 3 people, 4 people, because now she has hundreds and hundreds of people. You can't reset that once you're that big.
That's so true, Ellie. And the way I'm looking at this right now is I'm generally an optimist. I mean, even though I grew up in the East Coast of New York and we're like, trust but verify, I look at this and what I tell people and what I was telling those graduates is, listen, the number one in-demand skill for CEOs today is this notion of agility. And guess what? The last 3 months, we've been put to the test like never before on every dimensions of our lives. How we communicate, how we relate as a family, how we have to organize, how we have to change where we spend time, how we spend time, who we spend that time with. That is great preparation for the future of work, because it's like someone hit the fast forward button a few years. And now here we are in this unpredictable reality where the future is more uncertain than ever before. I mean, this is a slide in every presentation I've given the last year. The future is more uncertain than ever. Well, I mean, now it's like, how do I embellish that and make it even more crazy? Like, tomorrow is more uncertain than it was, 3 months ago. And so, but that's where I think we can take, some hope, and we can look at this and turn it to our advantage, which is we are learning how to be more agile in a way out of necessity. And it's not fun and it's not easy, but it's definitely, I think, going to benefit all of us, to equip us to be more capable to handle this uncertain world in front of us.
I love that. How did it go over?
Well, they haven't, when is it? The graduation's tomorrow. So I recorded it a couple of days ago. Yeah. So it wasn't live. It was like, here's a cast.
Oh, got it. Of course.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. And I can't wait to get feedback. I said, please send it to me. But I also had to do something which I'd never done before, which is I had to edit it. I had to put in the university logo and put my name on it, and had to learn how to use some editing software. So this is a really good test for me.
I love it. Okay, you have to let us know. I
All
know
right.
how it's going to go. It's going to go great, and they're going to be inspired because it is really authentic and true. But it takes me back to you and I know each other well, but just for everyone else who's joining us, why the name Talent Hacker, and why do leaders need to understand the importance of that? What can they get from that term?
Sure. So about 7 years ago, I finished a career in the domain of human resources, and it hasn't been the most loved demographic of professionals. Usually people know more of what they don't like about human resources than what they do like, and they've had more negative experiences than positive experiences. But that's allowed me to distinguish myself when you have a cadre of people that most people are suspicious around, and it's all about building trust and credibility. But I was very frustrated throughout most of my career with how boring, how outdated, how just slow moving and out of sync a lot of talent strategies were in the world. And I was spending time putting together hackathons for these technical staff around Silicon Valley, and all they're doing is looking at solving a problem with a completely different approach. Like, let's hack it, let's take it apart. And I said, I want to apply that to the whole domain of human resources. And the number one thing, and I actually had a dream one time that I wanted to be on the cover of Fast Company magazine, lighting a fire on a pile of performance reviews, because I hate performance reviews and I think they've done more harm than good. And when you ask people, why are you doing a performance review? Well, because that's what we do. Well, what is the reason? Like, what is the benefit? And so what I try to do is portray myself as a little bit of a rule breaker than a rule maker. But I do think that we really need to unpack talent strategies to better suit the times today. And I want to dive into that more with you in this conversation.
Absolutely.
Because most of these strategies I see fit like the 1950s. They don't fit 2020. They don't even fit 2000. But some people are still doing these things. And we've learned so many new things about how to approach talent differently. So that's how I lead with the expression talent hacker, because I want to be around organizations, leaders that want to do something different and want to try a different approach.
Now, both of us have lived, you continue to live there, but the Silicon Valley is really one of the toughest places to figure out how to attract the right talent, keep the right talent, motivate and get loyalty. But when I said those few words to you a couple of years ago when we had our first interview, you were like, you got the wrong words. You don't think retention, keeping, loyalty. Can you talk to us about how you flip that?
Oh gosh, how much time do we have?
We got lots.
6 hours? Is
yes,
that what we
exactly.
have? Okay.
But some of your stories from LinkedIn and others, I think, are just so perfect and relevant right now.
Well, I definitely have to give credit to having the good fortune of growing most of my career in Silicon Valley, because it is the most intense place to recruit. And I probably think the last 4 years of my career, when I was helping LinkedIn grow, and we went from 400 to 4,000 in 3.5 years, in the shadow of the sexy Google and Apple and Facebook and Twitter. And for a while, Groupon was in our neighborhood. I'm like, go back to Chicago. We don't want you here. And but what that competition, when they could double the salaries that you're paying, when they, their benefits include, we're going to build an in-law unit in the back of your house if you have a child and you're our employee. I mean, that's what it felt like this insane competitive, environment for talent, but it forces you to innovate. It forces you to really think differently. And so at LinkedIn, and this really helped shape a lot of my thinking that I've carried forward since then. I mean, you really have to know, it's kind of like in a relationship. If you don't know who you are, you're not going to find the right partner. And in an organization, if you don't know who you are and who's right in your organization, you're not going to be successful. And if you're really faced, and we had rejection after rejection after rejection, we're like, people don't like us, and what's wrong? And it really forced us to look deeply and say, well, why would anyone want to work here? And that simple question is a question I've been in boardrooms around the world. Say, we're having a problem recruiting. I said, well, why does anyone want to work here? And they said, well, because we've got great people, great products, we're going to make a lot of money. I said, okay, that's the same story everyone's telling.
Right.
What's different about you? Why would someone really want to work here? And so if you can peel that back and understand the true core of what it's about. You know, you can't, in Silicon Valley, you can't play to keep people a long time. It's a career candy store.
Right.
So what you have to do is you have to change the conversation. And it's almost like Tai Chi human resources, which is part of the talent hacking, which is, you know, I say right now, the recruiting slogan of the future should be, come work with me because I'm going to help you leave the company. You're like, what? Why would you say that? Because what I'm really trying to say is, I'm going to make you more valuable. Come and work for me. Not so that I can force you to stay here and be my little, on my shackles and be my slave, because I want to make you better. And if there's more and better and greater things you can do here, well, then let's renew and re-up and stay here. But I don't want to have this relationship be based on how I keep you here. Right. I want it to be based on how I want to make you want to be here. You see what I'm saying? So you flip it around. And I think that's really a big part of it.
I just want to interject for a sec, because first of all, I love that. Like, I'm going to help you leave the company. You know, for me as an entrepreneur, I haven't worked for a lot of companies that are big, and I haven't worked for a company for over 30 years. But when I did, if someone had said that to me, I might have stayed being a worker and not an entrepreneur. But I didn't feel, you know, of course it was many years ago. And last week when I was talking with Lorna Davis, she said something that is exactly the same, which is, it's a give and take. It's an interdependence that people are afraid to admit. And so if an employer can say, no, I need you. This is not, I'm trying to look like the big guy or woman in town and hope you're good enough to join my team. It's like, I need you, and here's why you need me. Is that part of it at all when it comes to talent?
It is. And here's the thing, Ellie, and this is why I was inspired to try to create a different narrative around talent. The relationship between the employee and the employer is just different today. It's just fundamentally different. And we're seeing all kinds of data show us that we're in a different reality. No one's really articulated in what is that new arrangement and what is that new partnership in a way that's safe for both parties. So when I speak to any audience in the world of executives, any country and any geography, what's your biggest talent problem right now? Can't keep the young people. Those darn millennials, disloyal, sugar high, you know, they think they want to be CEO tomorrow. They're just promotion hopping.
Right.
I said, not really the problem. I said, let me flip this on. Let me flip the conversation with the executive. Say, let me ask you this. Do you mean to tell me 30 years ago, if you had the choice and the visibility and opportunity that the workforce has today, where I can see what other companies are paying, what their benefits are, how much fun people are having, measure in indices of culture and engagement, which you could never see before. You mean to tell me that you would still stay in your company for 25 years? Bullshit. There's no way. So don't blame it on millennial. Look at the environment. It's a different landscape. How can you blame people for leaving when they have, that's the best thing about if you're entering the workforce, you have more visibility of choice than ever before. Now, it just so happened in the last 3 months, that choice decreased by about 70%. But when we get back to something a little more like we were, there's going to be a choice. And what I tell leaders is, do you have strategies around retaining people? And I said, do you think this trend of people leaving companies faster, right now, North America, the average tenure for someone 20 to 35 is 2.8 years. 2.8. If you give them stats, overall is about 5. And it's been declining for the last 50 years. You ask any executive, do you think that number is going to change? Do you think it's going to turn up? No. So maybe we should think about a different talent strategy that's not all about keeping people. Maybe we should accept that they might not stay and change it around. Maybe we should look to like the movie industry, where people are hired for a movie, we finish the movie, and everyone goes about their business and goes on to a different project. Maybe there's different ways of doing this than constantly being frustrated that people are leaving and having single points of failure, because you know it's probably not going to change. So maybe what you can change is how you think about your talent portfolio. And that's really what got me like, why are we doing the same things? Why are we looking at turnover as a bad thing? Maybe we could turn it into a good thing, you know?
Can you talk to me about the, and again, I remember some stories that you told from LinkedIn and other companies about the life cycle of a person in relationship to a company. I'm not going to even say an employee, from the minute you're looking out there going, we should just always be looking around for amazing talent, all the way till 10 years later when they no longer work for you?
Right. So we were forced, when I was sitting at LinkedIn and in helping organizations the last 10 years or so, we're forced now to have to think differently. And one of the ways that I'm trying to help people see this new reality is to say, okay, let's take the data around turnover and play it out. If you have more people leaving than ever before, is it true that you have, therefore, a larger alumni than you've ever had before? Yes, that's true. Okay, so what are you doing with that alumni? Are you just treating them the Tony Soprano School of HR and saying, you're dead to me if you quit? Or are you nurturing them and mining that and bringing them closer to the fold? Are you having them come back and give seminars and talk about life after the company? Because see, this is where if the truth is you're only valuable when you're here in my employment, you're missing a huge opportunity to gain value, whether it's a referral or whether it's a boomerang employee back. So what I think you have to do differently now is, from looking at a candidate to how you communicate with them, to your existing employees, to your former employees, they're the same. That's the same pool. You have to be investing as much time in your funnel and your potential candidates as you are with your candidates, as you are with your alumni, because that is an ocean that can be reinforcing and giving you more opportunities. And so I can tell you story after story, particularly from LinkedIn, where we had people leave and it was devastating because they were so great at recruiting, or they were so great, cultural ambassadors. They would leave and they would be better recruiters. And it would be sort of counterintuitive, like, wait, you left us, maybe you don't like us. No, I loved you when I was there. I need something different. You don't have that, so I'm going to go get something different. And then we would say, okay, well, can we invest in you? Can we keep up that relationship? Rather than say, well, have a nice day. We're going to have a going away party. Bye-bye. That's old school thinking. New school thinking is we need an ecosystem here. And that's how I see this playing out, is that the walls and the barriers are going to come down. And this COVID has really accelerated that. Like, one disappointment for me with COVID that I thought might happen is, the first thing that you try to do is, okay, let's lower everyone's salary and try to write it out. Okay, we can't do that, so we're gonna have to close some offices or maybe work less, okay? Then if that doesn't work, now we're gonna have to let some people go, okay? Now, how about borrowing or lending people? Like Instacart or DoorDash needs 1,000 drivers, or some of these respiratory factories, or, companies making injections or test kits, they need people. How about you lend them over there? Instead of them having to go reinvent the wheel and hire them, you vetted them, you know who's good. Why don't we have an exchange system like that? But it doesn't exist, because it's, no, you work for me and then you go, and then, so we need, I think there's an opportunity here where we could have loaned employees rather than just cut them loose. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, very interesting. I'm going to take a pause for a sec. Matt, do you have some questions or comments coming in?
Yeah, there was a good question here from Jeremy. And Steve, it's just getting back to your point that you just mentioned here. And the question goes as follows. Because there is a huge cost to losing employees, should companies start listening to employees who want promotions that they are entitled to as well?
Okay, let me rephrase that question. Should we allow ourselves to be taken hostage by employees who threaten to quit? Is another way of saying that. The answer is no. And the reality is, and to be fair, the notion that I'm addressing here doesn't, I mean, it's not a reality that works in every organization. Like, if I'm in NASA and I've got like a 7-year project, or I'm at a long development cycle organization, I probably do want some continuity of talent. And I do believe in truth. I mean, relationships and trust that get built over time have value. But when we see at the macro level, most people are not staying as long as they used to. At a minimum, we need to try to look at this differently. Now, what I think, in answer to this question from Jeremy, I've had many people come and say, listen, I got an offer from Google and it's 25% salary increase. And so the first thing I would do is say, well, do they deserve that in my compensation system? Have I been asleep at the wheel, and has the market changed, and should I adjust my system for this individual and maybe for some others? And if it's my bad, I'll say, I'll fix it. And now you've got a neutral bar. Do you want to work here? You want to work there? Because I've just made it the same. Or I could say, you know what? they do pay more. And if that's what you can get, you owe it to you and your family. But I will say, if I know where they're going, do you know how unhappy the people are over there? Are you really sure you're like, I would try to coach them and say, all right, if you're going to make that jump, let's have a mature discussion around how this fits into your career plans. Is that really the right place for you to go? Is that what are the motivations? Is it just money driven? Is that really what it is? And that's not a dirty conversation. I mean, the more money you have, the more freedom that you have for your family, that's no problem. But what are the real reasons? So I would try to coach that person rather than have a conversation around, oh, it's the promotion or not the promotion. Try to really understand what's the root cause of someone wanting to go potentially.
That reminds me of just from my own experience in entrepreneurial organizations. When we went from a service business to a software product business, it was bedlam, basically. Mm-hmm. And why it was bedlam is that we, like, as you were saying, you've got to be very clear who you are so you can figure out who is going to be most valuable to you. And at some point you have to say, we were this and we were very successful. We have now morphed into this. If you want to come on that journey, we will help you, but you're going to have to change what you do. If you don't want to go on that journey, as much as you're great, you should leave. And it's one of the, like, it's the employer's, it's their responsibility to say, this is who we are now, and it is different. And I've had that with so many clients where it's like, we were that, and those people were so good, and they've been so loyal, but we're just not that company anymore. So what do you do?
Yeah, and every company is going through some form of digital transformation right now. Technology is coming at us faster than we're able to build the skills. And I can see some of the comments coming in here. So let me address one of the interesting things. When I also look at the landscape of, like, what are people seeing when I think about work? If I'm just, average employee, Melissa, Joe, whoever, I look at the world of work, and what I see is everyone's telling me that robots, AI, and technology are going to replace me. Everyone's telling me that the shelf life of my skills is much less than it used to be. And that's true. What you learn has a shorter shelf life of value contributing to your career than ever before. So what's really interesting is that the future for companies is the same as it is for individuals, which is your value is not the business that you're in today or the work you're doing today. It's the work you can do tomorrow. And what COVID's forced is every company's got to think, like, can we pivot? How fast can we pivot? Well, you can pivot as fast as the quality of the talent you have that's able to pivot in a different direction based on how strategic you are and where you want to go. So what we're seeing, the companies that are going to survive longer term, particularly in the technology space, are the ones that can figure out how to pivot to new opportunities. Like Google is just printing money right now. Zoom, who we're using, printing money right now. And they're positioned really, really well. They don't have to do a massive pivot. But some organizations, like if you're selling cars, you're in a restaurant, you got to figure out a different pivot here. And so what is that and how can you do it? And you as an individual are more valuable if you're that person that can be able to pivot. Because no organization, here's the rub that is more clear than ever today. Companies don't really know how to plan more than 5 years out. And that's still a bit of a pipe dream. And so if you don't know how to plan 5 years out, you don't know what talent you really need, which means you don't know what skills to hire. So you're in this kind of complex, impossible situation. And so here's another sort of takeaway that is a big chapter in my book, which is your value as an individual tomorrow is not what you know. It's what you can know. It's what you can learn. And people are looking to start measuring someone's learning velocity. Like, I want you, Ellie, not because of what you know. Your deep expertise, that's important, but it's not as important as what you can learn and how fast you can learn new stuff and apply it. And that is a different psychological shift that organizations are having to face. Like, are we going to grow the talent? Are we just going to let it go and hire new talent? Well, you have to grow new talent, because if people come to you and they're feeling stale, they're going to leave. And that's another huge element that I'm finding about, you talk to millions and millions of people, why'd you leave? Well, because I thought I could grow faster over here and be more relevant and safe for the future in an uncertain world over there. I'm the best insurance you have in an uncertain economy is the ability to learn new stuff. Right. That's it. It's not being on a paternalistic, IBM-ish company that's going to never fire you. Mm-mm.
Right.
No company could say that anymore. the best insurance you have is being able to have a high clock speed of being able to learn and apply new stuff. And that's not how we're taught. Like, go to school, get a job, you're good. It doesn't work now. It's go to school, get a job, go to school, get a job, go to school, it's like always, and learning and unlearning stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I love that. I know there's a bunch more comments, but before we get to them, let's just get right to your book, because this is so much, obviously, of what the book is about. And when you and I talked about it, you divided it into 2 groups and the key themes in each group. And let's just start there, and then we'll open up to some more questions. I have some coming in here as well.
Great. Well, so I'm stuck with my book because I don't have a title yet. I'm whittling it down. So if anyone in the audience is listening to what I'm talking about, this is my book. This is the domain that I'm loving to talk about. And you have an idea, you know, I'd love to hear it, and I will credit you if you come up with the name for my book. But here's what I've tried to do, Ellie, is sort of give a handbook for people to say, hey, if you're rethinking careers, these are the things that I think you should be thinking about. You know, how to showcase yourself as someone who can learn, how to recognize that. And this is another really, you know, sort of a radical shift for people, is that I believe today someone feels more safe moving than staying in one place. Because if I'm moving, I'm learning. Safety used to be being stationary. And now if someone's looking at your CV, your LinkedIn profile, your resume, they go, 5 years, you're still there? Are you really challenging yourself? You know, and so, but that's not the reason to move. Isn't because a recruiter looks at it that way. The reason to move is, you know, the more you move, you learn new cultures, new leadership styles, new verticals, maybe new industries. You're becoming more valuable. And here's the other really interesting thing: in a more fluid workforce where people are moving more, guess what? Networks are bigger and better than they've ever been before.
Right.
The more companies I work for, the more people I know, the better my network can be to apply in my job. So that's why I say, don't look down on people who are necessary. Don't look down on a high fluid reality. That could be advantageous to you. And that's why I talk, you know, I'm talking to people in the first part of my book around your career and architecting it. Don't be afraid of that movement, but also don't leave before you've tried to sort of see if you can learn within your own organization. Some people just quickly knee-jerk out before they've actually sought, maybe there's new opportunities inside. So that's sort of the first half. The second half is, hey, organizations, knock, knock, woohoo, wake up. It's a new reality. And you need to create a new dialogue and a new framework that suits this new reality. Yes, you want to keep your superstars. Of course you do. But you also have to plan for the reality that some are going to go. So what are you going to do about that to insulate yourself from someone leaving and dropping the ball on something critical? Or what can you do to, you know, like I said, change the conversation so it's like, hey, I want you to stay here, but I really want to grow you. And that's the most important thing to me. Whether you're here or not, I want to be your mentor for the rest of your working life, you know? And that, I think, builds trust and gets the best out of people. But some of these organizations are still stuck on, you know, let's measure engagement. Engagement hasn't changed for 20 years. Gallup's been publishing engagement scores for 20 years. It hasn't moved. So is that really the right thing we should be measuring? Maybe we should be measuring something different, like maybe trust.
How do you define engagement? Just because that word is used in digital marketing and all kinds of things. What is engagement in the talent world?
Well, generally, I mean, there are different definitions of engagement, but Gallup's definition is basically based on, like, they call it the Gallup 12 questions. You know, are you clear on what your focus is? Do you have a friend at work? You know, generally getting at, do you feel overall positively inclined and highly motivated given all the circumstances in your work environment? Okay. And so that means if the answer is yeah, then you're engaged. Well, that number has been flat to declining to the point we had the highest number in the United States last year. Ready for it? The highest number is 30%. The highest it's ever been. Whoa, congratulations. That should be a crisis. What? 30%? That's really bad.
Yeah.
So, you know, what I'm asking people is, why are you measuring that? The numbers aren't changing. You know, what are you getting out of that data? You know, you're less bad than the next person. Maybe just change the conversation to something different.
Very, very cool. I'm thinking about my daughters who are millennials or maybe Gen Z. I can't keep up, but they're definitely very young teenagers. And I think for them too, they've grown up with this world of people who are who are YouTube producers and people who make money. They don't go to university and they sell, cosmetics or music or whatever. And so I think they also look at work differently. It doesn't have the same social capital implication. It's not like, oh, I want to be a lawyer, or, oh, I want to be an executive. It's more, that's how they make their money. And they're having a good time, and they'll see. If it doesn't work or the ad revenue goes down, they'll probably have to do something else. There isn't the same fear. Do you find that in younger people that you talk to? It doesn't feel as fearful for them to be changing constantly.
I feel like I've had the exact same conversations with my kids, Ellie. You make a really, really great point. And that's another part of they're seeing, new companies come in and disrupt old companies. They're seeing big companies like GE lose $800 billion of market cap in 20 years, which is like the biggest drop off of market cap value in the history of American business. The company that everyone thought was the best run company in the world, Jack Welch, GE, they're seeing all this disruption. They're seeing instability. And now they're seeing all these platforms where, wait, I don't have to work for the man. I can go make money on my own, as a, Uber driver or Airbnb, or make music and sell it on SoundCloud. Or my kids fell in love with this guy called Zach Hempel on YouTube because they're baseball fans. And he just goes around filming himself catching baseballs in the stands. And they're like, Dad, do you know what? They're like, Dad, he's got 1 million followers. You know how much money he makes, Dad? And they watch videos of this guy.
Yeah.
Like, Dad, do you know how many followers you have? You got 60. You're lame. And so, but, and at first I thought, well, this is really kind of like, how do I deal with my kids wanting to be YouTubers? And then I researched it and I said, what are they really learning? They're learning that if you make good content that other people find valuable, you're valuable. And that's a great lesson. And so I was like, okay, I'm good with it. I need to brush up on this. So for one of my boys' birthdays, I got him, well, we had it lined up. Now it's not going to happen. A tour of YouTube's headquarters just south of San Francisco, just kind of like, just try it on. And we're going to try to get an internship there. But that's really another part of this, these platform companies that let you find ways of making money. There's some futurists in my circles that believe the future work is we have one huge bubble of side hustles where we do a bunch of different things instead of one job. And I think employers are going to have to start reconciling, because this whole shaking of the mat with the pandemic has sort of flushed everyone out of the woodwork that was doing different things. And the people that didn't have an employer now have like, well, how do I get unemployment where I didn't pay into unemployment before because I was in a gig role? It's going to flush out new models, I hope, and hopefully accelerate. Because my whole concern with gig work like YouTubers is that, particularly in the United States, because we have a really crappy healthcare system right now, is if you're an independent person, good luck trying to get a mortgage for a house. Bank's not going to give you any money.
Right.
Good luck trying to find affordable healthcare. It's hard to get good coverage at an affordable price. So it discourages the independent and encourages people to go work for the man. And more people, I think, that find out they can find ways of earning a living without having to. Why would you work for someone else if you could work for yourself? Why?
Right.
Why would you want to do that?
I'm the wrong person to ask.
Yeah.
Because I don't work for anyone else, and I never have, except a very long time ago. No, I hear you. And I think it speaks to the idea of knowledge, which content is a reflection of your knowledge, and it's a reflection of your network. So, put that in other terms, not maybe YouTubers catching balls and selling cosmetics online, but just, anything you do is how much your network is worth, the social capital, and also how much you bring of your portfolio, whether it's in content or blogs or consultation or managing, whatever the word is or the verb, that's the reflection of your worth.
Yeah, and what's really cool, Ellie, and I'm glad you called that out. In my book, I've been able to find about a dozen stories of people who, through hobbies or through healthcare circumstances of their child, stumbled across opportunities that were they not in those circumstances. So, for example, there was one couple that I found that financial advisors, okay? However, what they really loved was cooking. And so they decided to form this dinner club where they would invite people over and they would pay the couple to make them a meal, and they would get to know other people. So they were growing their network, meeting people, loving this. Well, they started doing it so frequently that the apartment complex complained and they had shut them down. But they learned that's what they love to do, quit their jobs, went and bought a restaurant. And now that's what they're doing. They turned their hobby into something. And I think that's the beauty of the world today, that we can see, I can parlay this love or joy or hobby in a way that can create some income that can provide for me. That's a beautiful thing.
And has more meaning for you. Matt, let's, do you want to look at some other questions or comments there?
Sure, happy to. One question we received from the audience from Mary here is, for your personal moments here, Steve, what is one of the best moments you've experienced as an employee, and what was your takeaway from that?
Okay, I'm going to give some sort of American-Canada relations as part of this story. So in probably 2006, I was the human resource leader for a company in Burnaby, British Columbia, right at the foot of Simon Fraser University. And I had this really, really ornery software engineer. I know, work with me. Try to imagine an ornery software engineer is very, very cynical. And I'd been working at this company for like 2 years, and the morale was really low because the company was worth a lot. And then when the dot-com bubble burst, the stock went from $250 to $10. And everyone had, you know, like what we call a stock option hangover, and the mood was just really dour and everyone was really down. And so I was like working hard, like put a Starbucks in, you know, brighten the walls up and try to reorganize and get some energy going, get some social activities. And just try to like put some life back in. And the company started to improve a little bit. But I had one of the crankiest engineers, who I won't name, Phil, came up to me and said, he said to me one time, we're having a conversation, he goes, wait, you're American? I go, yeah. He goes, oh my gosh, I thought you were Canadian. After years. And I thought, wow, thank you. I take that as a compliment that you didn't think I was coming across as some, you know, big ego American. That was literally one of my favorite compliments. The second favorite compliment, same company, the CEO that I was working for, my boss, Bob Bailey, and I and the whole company had just gone through an incredibly rough year where, I don't know if some of you that follow options, stock options, there was a whole options backdating investigation and a bunch of CEOs got thrown in jail. And there was some very high scrutiny around practices. And we had an investigation. We were found out to have done nothing wrong, but it was very, very trying. It was very hard. We had a CFO that quit in the middle of a quarter. We had some good talent that got stolen by another competitor. And so it was a rough year. Last day of the year, we're just ready to go for Christmas shutdown or holiday shutdown. The CEO comes in my office and says, Steve, I wouldn't have made it this year without you. And I just want to thank you. I wouldn't have made it. And I almost started crying. And I said to myself, I'll probably work for free from now on. Like, that was the nicest compliment I've ever received in my life. No one's ever said anything to me like I wouldn't have made it this year without you. I was like, and then he said, I talk to you more than I talk to my wife. I go, hey, I can't help you with that, you know.
First of all, Steve, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I can imagine how much confidence and what a great sounding board you must be all the time. And, you know, unfortunately, you may have me calling you a lot more often now, now that I know that you'll work for free too. Any other comments or questions coming in, Matt?
Yeah, Steve, this one dates back. Jeremy's responding to his question previously in the conversation. And it goes as follows. Right now, the 20 to 35 age gap is being paid historically lower than our boomer counterparts. How do we address the inequalities in contract employment? Do we include things such as healthcare?
Yeah, so this is really an interesting dynamic, I think, how we build a framework that that's fair. And as you can imagine, when you're getting into regulatory issues, it gets sticky really, really quickly. One of the things that's been proposed by some of these gig companies, and I'm not really sure how I feel about it, in San Francisco is what we call sort of a hybrid classification. Traditionally, we've had employer, employee, temp, contractor. Okay. Now we've got gig worker, which is really a sexy name for a temp or a contractor. And they've proposed this hybrid because the state of California said, hey, Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, DoorDash, Instacart, people that are doing these contract jobs are actually employees. So you need to provide them health insurance. To which the gig company said, whoa, 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 whoa. We're going to go out of business if we have to do that. So the conversation is come down to, let's configure a new hybrid employee. But the real problem is not being solved. The cost of healthcare. Yeah. That's the real problem that people are trying to solve. So the gig company's like, hey, we want to provide viable opportunity. And look, we're giving work to all these, contractors, independent workers. And some of them don't want the healthcare because their spouse or someone in their family is covering them, which is fine. But this is a really sticky area. And I hope that we can find our way through it to a point where we get to a place where it does equal out. Because it does feel to me like they're, again, people with less means are being taken advantage of in some of these gig roles because they don't have choice. And governments have to try to figure out, how do we provide a safety net in a way that's not going to take these companies out, but also provide fair treatment and payment and compensation for some of these gig workers. It's a big problem. And if you think, every country's struggling with this, and I don't see, someone saying, do you think gig workers are just going to take over everything? I go, no, I don't think it's going to go very far in my lifetime because of the regulatory mess that has to be cleaned up to be able to facilitate those people being in a place where they can earn fair wages. Yeah, it's tough.
Big one.
But yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments there, Matt, before we continue?
We have had a few book title suggestions if you'd like to hear them.
Oh, always.
Great.
First one is The Power of the Pivot, or something along those lines. The Power to Pivot, Pivot Power. Nice. Another one is HR, Hacking Reality. And then third one is Get a Move On, Modern Career Handbook.
I like Get a Move On. That's interesting.
Nice. Let me ask the audience a question. So let me throw out a couple and see, give me like a yes or like on this one. So one of the books, the number one all-time selling book on leadership, I'm told by one of my mentors, is Built to Last. There's a book around, build a 100-year company, teach people how to fish. And I jokingly say, it's a 20-year-old book. I jokingly say, like, how many companies are trying to build for 100 years? They're trying to survive the next 5 right now. So one of the titles I was going to come up with was Built to Win Now instead of Built to Last. That's one. So I'm curious, what's the pulse on that Built to Win Now versus, other ones?
Getting any input there?
Not currently. We're just probably waiting on people to type here.
Okay.
Oh, there's 1 like, 2 likes.
Boring.
Hated it.
Someone said boring. I like the boring. The built thing. Built is also like not an active word. And I feel like everything that you're talking about in the book is about velocity and movement. And I think that movement and velocity is a really key thing. And it also addresses geographical movement. People may be moving to different places because their work is more valued somewhere else. Yeah.
Oh, Building to Win. That's a good one. So another one I was playing around with, and this came from one of my editors, is like, and again, we didn't cover this yet, but one of the inspirations for me to write this book was that I'm so sick of hearing the biggest narrative around the future work is robots, AI, and technology are going to just eliminate jobs. I go, it's the wrong conversation. It's how do we help people instead of scare them? And everything about future work is scare tactics. I go to these future work webinars and like, hey, look at this robot do this cool stuff. I go, no, you're just falling victim into the technology discussion. We are never going to catch up skilling people at the rate that technology is growing. We're always going to have the skill gap. It's going to rise. So how do you deal with a world where technology is outpacing and will continue to our ability to build the skills? Well, you try to build your skills as fast as you can so that you can be more relevant. So one of the things my editor was suggesting was F the robots. That's sort of provocative, like F the robots, the real, the future career handbook or something like that. Because the biggest career books out there right now is What Color's Your Parachute? I'm sure many of the
from 100 years ago.
I know, right? I know. So
All right, my friend, I'm moving on. You're on your
Okay.
own. You got some input from the group. I got a lot of other questions here. So if you don't have any more, Matt, I'm just going to move back in, and we can move back into questions in another couple of minutes.
Yep, that's great.
Okay, awesome. Can you talk to me? Okay, now let's get down to some tactics, okay? And again, if you want to talk in terms of the two groups and address them, because of course, in my audience, there's always going to be one or the other. So both the careerists who are working for people and the people who are managing them, whether they own the company or not. What are some of the tactics that you have learned through the companies you worked with, or that you're suggesting to really optimize the recruitment process? Like, I remember the 325 steps that you talked about when we last had an interview. I think it was at LinkedIn. Like, are some tactics you could talk to?
Right. Yeah. We had one point where we were so stressed out, Ellie, at LinkedIn around recruiting, that we reverse engineered and we opened the hood on the recruiting process and came up with like 300 plus steps, everything. And we would look at things like, okay, how many interviews were rescheduled and why? And who rescheduled them? Or if someone accepted a job offer, why was it 3 weeks from accepting and job starting? Why wasn't it 2? Why wasn't it 1? And we went through a whole anatomy of every part of that, which was incredibly revealing. But I would say, you know, getting down to some of the brass tacks, let's take the employer side first. One of the things in a reality that is increasingly going to be fluid, you know, I say move your investment dollars that you have around retention, move them more into development and, you know, helping grow your team. Instead of having that 5-year, you know, leather jacket because you've been here and sitting, you know, in the company for 5 years, maybe you have a 3 weeks, hey, you're still here, let's go out and grab a pizza. Thank you for still being here a month later. But let's move some of those dollars and time that you spend. Every company I've ever worked for in human resources has rewarded me in some part by what the turnover is of the company. Like keep people longer. We would even refer to things like handcuffs, you know, like let's lock them up with some big stock so that they can't afford to leave. Like it's just, we can't do that anymore. So what I'm trying to do, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, Ellie, is raise the thinking around, you know, you're going to have to, when you meet a candidate, it's not about closing them on the job. It's about closing them on a relationship with you for the duration of their professional life. That's what you need to start focusing on, building that rapport and that network to be a coach and a mentor and an element of positivity in their future, not a boss, not closing this. And so you have to open the thinking around that. So that's one thing that I try to encourage people to think about. I mean, if they haven't kicked me out when I've already said, my recruiting slogan is join me because I'll help you leave. If they say, oh, tell me more, then we have this conversation. If they're like, thank you, goodbye, then we don't even have that conversation. It's fine.
Your work is done. Can I make a comment on that before we move to the careers? It's reminding me of a really cool story that when I interviewed Jennifer Holstrom from the head of talent at GSV Capital. I know it's called something else now. She told me about a company, a very young and successful company that was a sort of version of Box, and started growing very, very quickly, and had a very young population in their as part of their employee group. And rather than saying, this is what you guys value, they did surveys right away while it was like in the peak of having to focus on revenue and sales, and found out what their employees cared about most. And he paid half of every employee's wedding.
Whoa.
Literally. He said, if you want to get married, because he looked at that's what people wanted. They wanted celebration. They were much more. And then as people got older, let me help you with getting your kids into extracurricular programs that you may not be able to do on your own. And they had incredible, you know, I don't want to say retention because that's not the right word, but people loved it. And what that got me thinking is, you're taking the values of your employees, what they care most of, and reflecting it in how you compensate them.
That's right. And you really customize that and personalize it. I think you're going to, that's just a great outcome of what I was saying earlier, which is get to know the person really. When we think about what's happened the last 3 months, you don't ever start a business conversation with, okay, let's get to the agenda. You say, how are you? How's your family? Are your parents safe? Are you safe? Is there anything I can do for you? Like, this is a beautiful thing that I hope builds some greater human connection. But I think that's a great comment. And it reminds me of one of the dimensions for talent, for in thinking about their careers. I think in a fluid reality, I think what I really want people to think about is when you're choosing, if you're going to choose not to do your gig thing, but you're going to go work for someone, I think I encourage you to take a look at, is this going to be network additive for me or not? Are people here leaving at a reasonable velocity so that if I'm here a year or two, I'm going to meet some really interesting people that can help me? Because I do believe in an era where things are changing fast, it really is who you know is as important as what you know. And what I'm also encouraging people to do, and I'm seeing companies do this more today, is not just recruit you because you got a big network. And not just because we want to mine it to hire, we want to mine it for ideas that you could get from them to help us solve something. Right. Or, you're getting challenged because of your circle. And that's something that when people are thinking, how do I articulate my LinkedIn profile of the future, CV resume of the future, is demonstrate learning velocity. Like, you need to show off the new things that you've learned and you've applied and how you've done that. And we've all done it, but we haven't called it out as explicitly as I think we need to in the future. And then secondly is to make it clear, like, hey, I've got a really good, robust network that I turn to help me, solve complex things. And that's a different, way. Like, we've thought of networks traditionally as, a cocktail party and, talking to people that you don't know, like cold calling. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm really referring to the people that you know. And the more you do move, the more that grows. And that's why I think companies that don't understand the reality of the fact that people feel insecure being in one place a long time now have to appreciate. So maybe you move them around in your company, And so, but those are a couple of things when I think about for individuals, I think are really, really important. I had a chance, my second job out of college, I worked for an insurance company just north of the Golden Gate Bridge down here. That company, Fireman's Fund, was awesome. People went there and they worked there their whole lives and they retired. Salt of the earth people, loved them. I was in my late 20s. I'm like, there's got to be something else. Insurance is nice. These people are nice. I went down to Silicon Valley, and within 2 years, half the people I worked with left and worked somewhere else. But what started to happen was friends from Google and Yahoo and other, hey, would you come work over here? Could you come work over here? I'm like, whoa, I had no idea this is what a network is.
Right.
And so I'm going to discourage my kids from going to work for a company like the insurance company today, if that's where they want to go, and say, okay, if you love that work, that's one thing, but here's something that's going to be hugely valuable for you down the road if you go to a network additive organization.
So I have a question that came in, and I know some people here might be struggling with this. What about people who, they've done well, they're maybe gig workers, plus they worked at other companies, they've got a good network, but they're at the point in their career where they're like, gotta change it up. It's not working for me anymore. Nothing dramatic, just, What are some of the things they could do to jumpstart that process so it's not so intimidating or uncertain for them? Okay.
Well, one of the stories in my book is of a gentleman that I met who was a head of sales, really good, like in his mid-50s, been doing sales his whole life, really good at it, making a really good living, but had socked away enough that he's like, you know what, I can do a pivot and take a little bit of a risk and not have the financial strain in doing that. What he did was, when he wasn't working, he was on all these charitable organizations raising money, because he's very uncomfortable cold calling people and saying, give us money, because that's what he does in sales. Right. So he's like, 3 or 4 nonprofits, coaches, like I knew him from coaching sports with our kids. And so he came to me and says, what do I do? I go, okay, what do you love to do? He's like, I love to do this. I think I want to do nonprofit stuff. I go, really? Okay, well, that's a pivot and you're 50 plus. He goes, yeah, I want to try it. So we set up a bunch of interviews through some friends that I knew, and he wound up getting a head of development for a nonprofit organization. So what I would encourage anyone who's feeling like they've got the career blahs, and keep in mind, we're going to work till we're 100 now. So,
Right.
You're going to have more than one pivot in life. You're going to have multiple pivots, and
Right.
that's fine, and it's okay. And good news is, so what I would do is take stock. Where do I feel my sparks are getting lit? Where am I feeling some energy, and where are people in that arena that have some of my background that I might be able to customize and apply? So in the case of Scott in my book, he knew he was really good at that. He knew he liked doing sales and nonprofit. He was able to find a hybrid approach. Now, he did it for 3 years, and then he went back into sales. Doesn't regret it for a second.
Right.
But it was an interesting. So the good news is, again, like I said earlier, there's more visibility to what people are doing out there. Try to find some people on LinkedIn that have been doing what you're doing, but are doing something different, and go talk to those people.
Yeah.
How did you do it? What do you like? Some people mistakenly think, by the way, that they're going to like something they've never done before. Be very, very careful. Don't cut the cord until you go do it, go try it out, or volunteer. And the last bit of advice on this one, Ellie, is if you're doing a big pivot, like a 90-degree pivot, like I'm an accountant, now I'm going to do HR, just for the sake of example, like something dramatic like that. My recommendation is you are not going to be interesting to someone in the new pivot because you've never done it. So what I would do if you're in an organization, so here's another guy that I met, career technologist, wants to get in diversity. I was like, how do you know? Do you know that people in diversity don't have a lot of credibility or power in organizations? And you're going to be begging for budget dollars?
Right.
Is that what you want? He's like, oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, I'm going to, go talk to 7 people doing it to make sure that.
Oh, we got a cut there.
What's that?
Oh, sorry. Can you, sorry, did everyone hear that? I didn't hear that,
Okay.
but go ahead.
Sorry. I was on a roll. Okay. Let me see. Can you hear me, Ellie?
Yeah.
Good.
Perfect.
Okay. What I was going to say, and what we were able to do is have him meet a bunch of people to explore whether what's the day in the life of. And then I said, in your company, do they have someone doing diversity? He says, oh yeah. I said, why don't you go volunteer and give them a couple of your discretionary hours and try it out. And it's the trying out, I think, where you're going to be able to see, do I like it? Am I good at it? Do people, is this kind of rewarding in the way that I thought was possible?
Yeah.
So, but I think that that's a healthy thing that we should all be experimenting like that a lot, to try it, because we are going to make pivots, and the things we're doing now may not be as valuable or interesting 10, 15 years from now, or worth as much. So we should be always looking. And that's the last, not just when you're ready for a change, like all the time, because you never know when something is going to fit with what you can do. And you kind of owe it to yourself.
I like the analogy for me is both in the technology world and the creative world. It's iterative, right? Everything is iterative.
That's
well,
right.
Your career should be exactly the same. So, you do a pilot, you don't just go into production, or, you build some ideas and get customer feedback, and then you start building your beta. That's a very short version of it. But, and so that is exactly how I would look at my own career, and, step by step. And the other thing that I think is really key is don't expect anything. Go with an open agenda, because it's usually something from left field that actually attracts you, or if you're open enough to it, you'll go, wow, I was actually looking for diversity. It turns out this is really interesting. I think I'd be very good at it, and it's more my style, or whatever the case may be. Matt, do you have any questions there, or should I keep going?
Just keep on rolling, Ellie.
Okay, so I have one that came in here. Hold on for 1 sec. So it said, can you talk a little more about what you started to say about the role of technology in the future, the sort of robot versus human?
Sure. So one of I hope one of the positive outcomes of this whole crisis we're going through right now is that it's force technologists and technology to be more human. And we have had to find ways of finding connection on Zoom and other video platforms, right? In the past few months. And I hope that's what's going to happen. Here's my biggest beef with the conversation about the future of work. It's all about fear and it's all about technology. Technology in its, ultimate form should deliver a greater human experience. That's what I believe technology is here for. And so, one of the challenges I believe organizations have today is that if you want to build high performance, you need to build an organization where people have high degrees of trust. People are spending more time looking and communicating via a device than they are eyeball to eyeball. And I think that's a disabler. And until we get the technology to allow us to connect in ways that build that trust on par or better than human interaction, I think we need to be very careful to walk away from intentionally creating human interactions, right? So this is where I think technology's got a long way to go to be able to facilitate that. So I tell organizations today, listen, are you managing human interaction right now? Like, what are you talking about? Of course we have human interaction. Really? Are you looking at how much time your people are on a device versus in person and connecting or working together? And so we don't know what the right formula is for that. We don't. It's new territory for us.
Yeah.
We're blazing the trail and we're still like prisoners of this thing. I don't know. Do you guys have it in Canada? Email? You guys have it up there? Like, who created that thing? It's a beast and nobody's on top of their email. Like, why haven't we come up with something different? Why do I have to type or text? Why can't I just voice all this stuff?
Right.
It's just,
right.
Come on, there's just got to be a better way.
My favorite is how Google has created primary updates, promotion, social. So basically I only look at primary and that's it, because whoever goes into the other inboxes, like, I just don't have time. And you miss so many things. It's like, oh, forget it. I'll have to reorganize it another way.
And I think like new hire orientation should include helping people and giving people permission to manage their technology or the domains of their day. Like, I know some people like, I only email between this hour and that's it. And if people want to reach me, and I had one guy at LinkedIn, this is a great story. He declared email bankruptcy. So what he did was he sent an email to everyone, says, I declared email bankruptcy. I don't know what happened to all my emails. They disappeared. So I don't have them anymore. So if you said something to me, sent something that's really important, I need you to call me. That's what he did.
I love that. That is really, really good.
Yeah, he was super smart.
I wanted to ask you something. I'm going to switch for a sec. And in the world of talent, it's so much about decision making. Can you reveal, if you're comfortable, one of the best and one of the worst decisions you've made and what you walked away with from each of those?
All right, I can give you the same decision was the best and the worst.
Okay.
How's that?
Yes.
This is hard. You mentioned that you might ask me this one. I'm like, whoa, man, like where do I go with? There's a lot of places to go. But this is a real moment for me, a turning point in my life and my career. So I was at Cisco and we were doing M&A work. And part of that work was on the people side, that we would buy a company and my team would integrate the people. We'd figure out how to put them in our job families. We'd figure out, or do we need to move people around? Is the org structure need to change? Does their compensation fit our scheme? And communicate. And basically our job was to get them comfortable and high performing after we'd paid millions, in some cases, billions of dollars. Loved it. Greatest job I'd ever had at that point in my life. Well, we were starting to find that we had all these people had like younger companies had like one salesperson in China. And it was getting to be problematic. Like, someone going to fly out there and talk to the person? Because we felt we needed to do a human touch. So we interviewed a bunch of people and we needed to hire someone. And I was still pretty young in my career, probably like, I don't know, early 30s. And I never really managed much of a big team before. I was always a consultant, independent person, and had a boss and so forth. So I was building a team, and now we had like 10 to 12 people. And I was working for a woman who'd never gone to college. She was a high school graduate. And we had a candidate that was ex-airborne ranger, taught himself Mandarin in school, was fluent, had lived in Asia, and was like, wow. And I always had an edge against military people. I'm just like, oh, you're too by the book. You're not going to be too flexible. And so I went to my boss. I'm like, yeah, I think we should go with candidate B over here, not this guy. And she was really, really good. She's like, really, why? I said, and so she eased out of me. I was intimidated by this guy. He's really good. he was better than me in a bunch of stuff. And I was afraid to hire him because like, well, then he could kind of do my job. And so I finally, after like an hour, finally opened up and I said, well, he's kind of better than me. Like, why would we hire him? Like, don't we want to hire not as good as Steve? You're going to be able to do even incredible stuff if you have him on your team. I was like, oh yeah. And then she said, you got a PhD in this. He doesn't know how to do this, integrate. And we've been written up in the Wall Street Journal as doing like great stuff. So I'm like, okay. So then she got me to hire him. Like she said, it's your choice, but it really wasn't a choice. You know what I'm saying? And so that was like hard for me. Like, why do you do that? And I've since come to realize, so roll the tape forward. He's one of my best friends. Like I could have missed having that friend, that person in my life. And he's now like a super HR leader over at Google. And he's like, I can't believe they hired me. I'm over 50. I'm like, well, you're checking a box for them over there, but he's a great guy. And he's a great guy. And I as a marker that as a sign of maturity in leadership is, are you comfortable hiring people that have skills better than you? Because it's going to make you better. But if you're insecure with your own, and I was pretty insecure with my own sort of power relationship at that time, that really, I think, sort of, was a good wake-up call for me. Yeah. And it was a hard decision, turned out to be one of the best decisions I'd ever made.
I 100% agree with that. A people hire A+ people and B people hire C people. And I mean, it's really, there's a cutoff, and, always want to have people who are additive and better at things than you are. What about the concept in hiring, and this is probably in larger organizations, but maybe not, where people tend to hire who they like because they reflect themselves in that person, as opposed to finding teams that are complementary. Is that something you come across a lot?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're a bunch of human beings, Ellie. I mean, we have more biases than we can even count. And the fact is, it's just there, And so, I'm a big believer in the traditional recruiting process. Again, talk about talent hacking. The traditional recruiting process, the worst way to hire someone is to interview someone. That's the worst way. The only good hire you're going to make through an interview is someone who is a professional interviewee. Okay. Right. That you're hiring to be interviewed for the rest of their life. Like, that's the only form. So you're not seeing how they do it. And yes, you have reference checks and you have other people to do it. But, we've got, every job, someone said to me recently, all work is teamwork, which is true. So how well do they work with other people? Well, they need to connect with other people. And the challenge in recruiting is you've only got a finite period of time where they can sort of, interview and be away from their current position in some cases. But you want to try to find, to me, the best job interview is a 2-month internship. But unfortunately, only unemployed college students or unemployed people can do those internships. Right. It's just, no one's going to say, hey, Ellie, go ahead, take 2 months off and go check out to see if you want to go work over there at TELUS, for a couple of months. It doesn't work that way. It should, because then you try them out and they try you out, and you see, do they fit your culture? And you see, do I like their culture? And am I treated with respect? And is my work valued? And do I feel good about myself? So it's hard. It's a really completely imperfect, which is another reason why people don't stay, because we have like the most inexperienced leadership, bar in the world right now, because we haven't faced tough stuff. Now we got some tough stuff, right? Like, I've talked to dozens of leaders who've never had to fire someone before, or had to fire someone for the first time, just picking them up off the floor, just devastated, super hard. That's going to be muscle, unfortunately, or fortunately, that will help them in the future, understanding what that's like, But yeah, I resonate with, where you're coming from on that one. It's challenging, but it really is kind of an imperfect matching. It's kind of like interviewing is kind of like blind dating. Like, you don't really, a person gets in there. I just talked to a friend today. He's like, yeah, I took the job and it sounded great. And then I got in there and what they told me really wasn't what it was. But I didn't know that because I had to go in there and see for myself. And I was really intrigued enough that I wanted to try it out. But, okay.
I've had, on the other side of that, I've had, two things is I always like to bring people into situations, as you said, that aren't an interview. So, have them come over for dinner to someone's
Yeah.
house, right?
Yeah.
Bring them into a team brainstorming, and don't give them any rules, right? Why not? You know, do they jump in? Do they become an observer? That, you know, I mean, there's a lot of ways. I guess in entrepreneurial companies, that's the agility you're looking for. Like, let's see how you navigate situations that are not black and white, and there are no rules. It's just how you're going to interact with people.
Yeah, I've seen so many. I can give you stories like for hours on different interview styles and approaches. And here's the thing. The same thing with people ask me all the time, what is a great LinkedIn profile? I said, well, I could tell you what I think, but I'm not the person hiring you. And I've looked at CV resumes and seen a typo, and I've got a typo in mine too. I'm good with it. Or someone's like, no way will I ever hire anyone that has a typo. You know, it's in the eye of the beholder.
Right.
You know, but you know, the truth comes in, like, people, this is about the business of trust. Recruiting is about the business of trust. So the bigger your network is, the more likely someone in that company knows you or knows someone that knows you, and you're going to have that stamp of sort of trust, quasi trust, which is better than no trust. That's why I say, you know, if you're going to find a job and you're over 30, cold sending it in is probably not the way to go. You got to use your network to get in there and find a back door. But I've had people in interviews that do this, and this was a executive at Facebook. He's not there anymore. He would make every person that he was interviewing sit unexpectedly with his admin assistant in the room and be told, sorry, he's running 10 minutes late, and see if that person was going to show his assistant respect or disrespect. Are they going to ask him questions? Are they going to treat him like an equal?
Right.
Or are they going to say, you know what, this coffee kind of cold. Can you get me another?
Right. You
know, like, that's going to play as a litmus test for, does this person have the integrity and behavior that's important? And that was a big bar for that executive, which is pretty interesting. You know?
And as you said, it's all individual.
Right.
Matt, do we have any other questions there or comments you want to read out?
There was one question that just dated back to your story about 10 or 15 minutes ago, Steve, and it's, did Scott go back because of the remuneration or because he wasn't enjoying the job?
Neither. He liked the job. Wasn't about compensation. I think he's really good, and someone lured him away with a little more money. And the other thing that was unfortunate for him was he lived about a 20-minute drive to San Francisco, which he didn't love, but he didn't hate. And the company moved to Oakland, and now it was 45 minutes. And they hired it, was 2 minutes away, like
right
there. So that whole, you know, this is all about life calculus. You know, it's like never about just the job or the money. It's like, it's the commute, it's the boss, it's the culture, it's the work schedule, it's the dress code, so many factors. And this is why when I go to college students, I go, how on earth do you know where you want to work? Because there are literally 1 million plus combinations of big company, small company, fast-paced company, slow-paced company, national company, international company, micro company, family-owned, takeover, merger company, acquisition target, new leadership team, company that just took out a big bank loan, company that went public, like so many different stuff. Like, you don't know where you do your best work. And that's why I love the fact that people are trying to work in different places, because they're going to get closer to finding a really high pressure situation. I really like deadlines. I really like these late hour crunches, or I really like being independent and left alone. I don't want someone breathing on me up in my grill all the time. Right. You don't know that until you get out there. And that's why internships are a wonderful thing. I never did an internship. I worked on building houses and taught tennis and was a camp counselor. I wish I'd done internships through college to just get a taste, right, of what's out there. And the sampler plate right now of what's out there is infinite, which is kind of overwhelming and exciting at the same time, you know?
Absolutely. You and I talked a bit about, you know, we're veterans of having gone through a few boom busts. And I did a panel on this a couple of weeks ago, and every one of us were telling our war stories of either 2001 or 2008. Can you talk a little bit about the role of the unicorn, the unicorns that came out of the last boom bust, and how that might play similarly or not moving forward?
Love to. I think this may be the beginning of my next book, actually. So this is also something I included talking to the graduates in my speech the other day, which is this. In 2008, in the heart of the global banking meltdown, someone did some research and they discovered that of the currently 300 plus minus unicorns that are out there today, 30 of them were born in 2008. And they include, and I told this to the San Francisco graduate, they include Square, Slack, Dropbox, and what was the other one? Square, Slack, Dropbox,
Airbnb.
Uber, Airbnb, and Glassdoor.
Right.
Right in San Francisco. Like, so what happens, and it turns out, and I've done a lot of research on this recently, it turns out that in periods of stress and strain, we as humans, we slow down, we focus more, we get a little more intense, and we see things that in normal times we don't see. So some people go, oh, wow, that's pretty amazing. No, it's not amazing, actually. It's actually a natural outcome of crisis. Is we get a little more intense, we slow things down a bit, and we focus more. And so that's got to feel, that's sort of encouraging. But another dimension of these unicorns, speaking about the future work that I find absolutely fascinating, and this gets into what's interesting for me about my book. If you take a look at the length of time, the average length of employment at, let's go, Oracle, Uber, Slack, Airbnb, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, throw in a few more companies in that family, none of them have an average tenure over 2 years. None of them. So they're not, disadvantaged by not having, people there 10, 15, 20 years. Most of them are under 20 years to begin with. But what's fascinating is they were born in crazy. Building a startup is crazy. What's going on right now? It's just another day in the office.
Yeah. It's
not insanity. People that are looking for continuity and reliability and predictability and stability and have been in, and I'm not disparaging these, but, banking, insurance, where they have not led with technology, are now on their heels. Okay. And so that's not where I'd want to be. I'm so fortunate that I'm in this space, but that's why I think we have overvalued, tenure, maybe,
mm-hmm.
But more importantly, I think maybe we undervalued new people coming in with new ideas, new ways of solving problems, and new ways of looking at things from a different point of view. And that's what you get when you're hiring a lot of people. New ideas are coming in. So how quickly you apply them. You had someone on one of your interviews recently that's like, hey, the systems that are listening to employees are rising. Like, we're listening more, and you have to, because that's where all the information is.
Right.
Like, I believe a manager today is more information broker than give me the info, I'll make the decision. Okay, no, I got that. I got to give that to Ellie or Susan or Matt or Adam. I get it, rather than hold it, because it's just impossible.
Right.
So you're like a distributor rather than, and then you're a course corrector, because every day we're learning new things. Oh, fix this, change that, rather than fix it.
Which in a way goes back to where we first started this, which is all about agility. I mean, that is what agility is. I mean, it's interesting even listening to this, having been in the entrepreneurial world for so long, I don't know any other way. Like agility is the thing that we have. What we don't have is stability or tenure, so it's funny what side of the spectrum you're on. I guess that has been a reality for so long. Equally Zoom. When this whole thing started, we've been using Zoom for years because all of our clients are virtual. And so that was one adjustment we just didn't have to make. It was funny. It was like, it's gotten better, and we were noticing the improvements on the app, but we weren't like, wow, I can't, it was, one of those things. Of course, the fact that we didn't buy stock is a whole other problem. Where are we at time-wise? I don't even have a clock here.
About 2:24.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So Steve, I really appreciate your time. Was there one other question you want to throw in there, Matt, or where are we at?
No, we're good on our end, Ellie, unless it's one more you want to.
Oh, was there one more name that came in?
No, that was it. The last question from.
Oh, your network is your net worth.
Yeah, we got some great book titles here. I hope there's a way that we can archive the chat box.
Oh, absolutely. We'll send them all to you.
Great.
So first of all, thanks for taking so much time. It's actually fun to turn my phone off and not have my clock on my computer because you just go. And I see we have so many people that are still with us. And so I appreciate your time, Steve. I really do. I want to close by saying that I feel like I'm walking away right now with a sense of optimism, and I'm mostly an optimistic person, but mostly for my daughters is what I'm thinking. I'm going back to, you know, they haven't graduated college yet, but what I'm hoping is that they're going to walk into a world or help to create a world where organizations and the people they work with, whether it's their own company or they work for someone else, will really work on reflecting their values and accepting or actually admiring their unique skills and their version of success, not just asking them to plop into whatever is already there. And to me, that is real success. This is a painful time, but it seems like a reset that had to happen in some ways. And so that leaves me feeling very optimistic about the future of our talented kids and grandchildren and everyone else moving forward. Never mind all of us now, because we're still the talent, right?
Yeah, Ellie, thank you so much. I enjoy every minute we're together, and you have a way of kind of getting the best out of me or other folks that you talk to. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate it. It's been great to be in conversation. Thanks everyone for your comments. And it's Mother's Day this weekend, so we're taking next week off, but we'll be back at you with our next Ellie conversation. Stay tuned for the next few weeks in May after this week. It's great to see you, Steve. We'll continue the conversation offline.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye everyone.